Good evening. Welcome, everyone, our admitted students, our 2L, Brendan, and our three fabulous class of 2021 graduates. Our audience today is, I think, exclusively admitted students to the class of 2026. Brendan, do you want to start? Brendan Clark is a student assistant in the Office of Law Advancement, and he has done all the heavy lifting with organizing tonight's panel.
Well, I haven't done too much. So I'm Brendan Clark, and I'd like to thank all three of our wonderful alums on behalf of the Office of Admissions and the Office of Advancement for coming to join us this evening. We're really delighted that they're here to share some of their experiences and some of their tips. So I'm going to let our three alums, George, Dome, and Catherine, and I'm going to let them share a little bit about themselves as an opening introduction, and then we're going to turn it over to them to ask a few questions. And a little later in the evening, Jamie will return and have them answer some of your questions out in the audience. So please don't be shy, and congratulations on your admission to William & Mary.
Well, great. George, since you were a former graduate assistant in the Office of Law Communications, would you like to start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your current post?
Yeah, that would be great. So like all of our panelists today, I graduated from William & Mary just about 2 years ago. I'm currently working as a workforce development attorney at the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service in Baltimore. Previous to this position, I was a staff attorney at Legal Aid Society of Eastern Virginia. So I've been working since graduating as a legal aid, legal services attorney.
Dome, would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dome. I have also been working since graduation. I am a dual fellow. So I'm an Equal Justice Works Fellow, and I'm also a Center for Reproductive Rights Fellow. So I work on maternal health related issues, reproductive autonomy related issues, and I've been working there for 2 years too.
I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Maldonado. I graduated like Dome and George in 2021. I currently am a commercial litigation associate at Weil, Gotchell and Manges in New York. So, and I've been in this position since graduate, well, after the bar. So for a little bit.
I think you're muted.
You're mute, Jamie. I should mention that this panel is being recorded and will be available on our website afterwards. I'm going to read some of the questions that were submitted in advance, and then after we get going, I will open it up to questions from the audience. The first question, what advice about law school do you have for incoming law students that you wish someone had given you? What do you wish you had known your first day of law school? And I'm just going to jump in and say this is the pandemic class, so perhaps it would have been good to know that midway through your 2L year, life as we know it would change. But you know, you rolled with the punches. But please jump in.
I guess I can start because I have comments. I think it's really, so you get so much advice when you first get into law school, and you also get a lot of comments that make you feel kind of sick in your stomach because people are making you nervous, they're making you anxious, they're telling you to read all these books and 1L of a ride, 1L this, 1L that, and it's like you just kind of get overwhelmed and you feel like you need to do all these things before, like during the summer before school starts, and honestly, you don't. I bought all those books. I read all of them. They did not help me to do anything. I kind of wish that I just took the time to relax and enjoy myself, because it's a very stressful, and it's a fun, but it's a lot of stress. You know, law school is a very intensive program. It's 3 years to get a lot of work done. So I wish that I took more time to just kind of like relax and rest and really enjoy my summer before school started. And then as far as when school actually starts, I think law school has a way of subconsciously making you feel like you need to do something a certain way in order to succeed. And I think it's really important that when you do start law school, you really have to like sit down and tell yourself, what kind of person am I and what works for me and what doesn't work for me, and stick to those things. Like if you know that when you were in undergrad or when you were in grad school or working, that you never studied in the library one day in your life, don't feel like now you have to turn into Elle Woods and go to the library every single day and like start, flipping through the books. If you know you're not really gonna concentrate there, I found that I worked better in the cafe before the pandemic. And I found also that during the pandemic, I worked a lot better at home. I didn't have as many distractions. There wasn't anyone to kind of disturb me. So I did have a very good study experience that way. And I just realized that I can't do what everyone else is doing. I have to do what works for me. I have to do what looks best for me. And that might look different from what your classmates may be doing. So don't feel pressure to kind of conform, because this is what they do in law school. There is no one way to do law school.
I'll just echo that. I mean, Dome said this our 1L year to a group of us. And she said, certain things just don't work for me. And I literally live by that today. Think of her all the time, even in this job, right? If there are things that just don't work for me, I'm not going to, do them how they've always been done just because that's what people say you need to do. So I think, her advice is like so helpful, not just in law school, but in life, to really get in tune with yourself and trust yourself, right? You've gotten this far, you got into law school, like you can do this. It's a matter of just leaning into, what you know and what works for you, and pushing that along. It'll certainly get you through.
Yeah, I think you both said everything I was thinking of. Trust yourself, you know what works best for you, and you're already all excellent students with a lot of experience. The only thing I would add, I think something that I wish I had prioritized more my first semester or two of law school is really focusing on just like building relationships. I think William and Mary did an excellent job of setting you up with a sort of a core group, your legal reading and writing class, your group there that you take all of your 1L classes with, and you really are going to get to know those people very, very well. But I think the more you can sort of work to build relationships with 2Ls and 3Ls, with professors, and I think the most important one for me is people who aren't in law school, and maintaining friendships and maybe meeting people in Williamsburg who aren't a part of the law school, who are studying other things, who aren't students at all. That's very valuable, and it helps you sort of stay grounded while you're surrounded during the day with other law students. So to the extent that you can, stay in touch with family and friends from back home and continue setting aside time for those important relationships, that's something that's extremely valuable.
The second question was asking you to expand a little bit about what you do today in your day-to-day work. What gives you a sense of accomplishment, and what are the biggest challenges?
I can start this one. So I work at a legal services provider, which means I'm an attorney who works providing pro bono services for people who fall below a certain maximum income range, which isn't something I knew 100% I wanted to do at the beginning of law school. But I think going in, it was very important to me that I wanted to be doing something where I felt like it was helping my community. And I also knew I wanted to be working face-to-face with clients rather than with, in an environment where I was only interacting with other attorneys. And it really ended up being sort of the perfect fit for me in both those regards. So I get to spend a lot of my day either talking face-to-face or on the phone with people who are looking for legal help and legal advice. And I get to work with them and help, explain legal issues, sometimes provide them with direct representation or assistance in connecting to other resources. And I think probably the greatest sense of achievement I have in that position is just when I feel like I have a really good conversation with someone where they're going through a hard time. And by having the opportunity to sit down with somebody who's gone through a legal education and training, they feel like they get answers and help that they wouldn't have been able to find just searching the internet or trying to muddle through things on their own.
I think for my experience, I'm a litigator at a law firm. And I think for me, what really, brings me value are just some of the wins that we have that are small, that impact the law and change how we view the law and what happens. And I'm thinking of recently, we had an oral argument in one of my pro bono cases that I had a wonderful opportunity to argue. And we got a great outcome from the judge. And I just think about what are we doing for those communities, for the people that come after us, and how are we impacting, how people will navigate this legal system in the future. I think that's really the things, it grounds me and reminds me of the importance of what I'm doing, even if it feels like sometimes I'm focused on these like minute things, and lose sight of the big picture. I think when you get some of those big picture wins, I think that helps sort of remind you that there's a purpose behind what you're doing.
And then I'll go next. So I worked at the Center for Reproductive Rights, and they recently, well, last year, argued the Dobbs case that overturned Roe v. Wade. And so I think, in law school, when I wanted to focus on maternal health, I kind of felt like there was just a lot of pushback generally, because people really felt like we were safe under the protections of Roe, and what can you really do in the maternal health space, and what kind of attorney would you be? And so it was kind of like a bittersweet kind of, I wouldn't even call it an accomplishment, just to see that when Roe fell, it was kind of like then everyone suddenly became much more interested in reproductive health, reproductive autonomy, and maternal health. And so just being able to educate people on what reproductive rights are versus reproductive justice, what are the different pathways, and what we can do now in order to kind of give us something that might be even better than Roe moving forward, and working on impact litigation, which is a little bit different than just, going to court and on a regular basis, because you really have to build a story, build a case. You have to think so hard about what the consequences for the people that you're involving in this kind of long-term journey would be. And they are people that can't usually afford their own attorney. And so it's just really fulfilling work, but it can also get a little bit depressing because so many people have lost reproductive rights. And so I think it's just important that I'm able to be in this space and work in this space. And I'm just happy that I get to share with everyone else what I feel like I've known since law school. So
Thank you. The next question, what courses or experiences help prepare you best for life in your career after law school?
So I can think one of my favorite classes was torts, and it'll be an interesting experience for all of you when you go through it. But I think for me, just some of the practical aspects of like the law are helpful today, right? When I have different product liability cases that deal with tort law, and just being able to understand that piece. But then another more practical thing that I learned from law school is my clinic experience was pretty helpful in learning how to not just like work with a client and do work. It's also balancing that with billing and figuring out what are like the practical things that you need to do as an attorney when you become, after you graduate. So I think the clinic experience is just great. And if there's an opportunity for you to work directly with clients, I would encourage you to do that.
I'll go next. I felt a lot of pressure originally after you finish your core classes to kind of take bar courses, which are courses that people feel like will be on the bar. And so people feel like it's important to have a semester of learning in order to help you, succeed on the bar. I took the opposite route. I only took classes that I felt like I really wanted to learn about. And William and Mary is really good at electives. I took cultural art heritage law with Kat, I love that course. It had nothing to do with anything that I wanted to do, but I enjoyed myself. It was a great time. I took a lot of civil rights litigation courses. I took a lot of health law courses. I even took like employee benefits course because I was just curious to see, you know, what that looks like in practice. I took family law. I took race, gender, justice related classes. And so I just really had a ball once we finished with the core classes. I was like, I'm going to take whatever I want, however I want. And the benefits show because when you're happy about a course that you're taking, the grades usually reflect that. And, you know, if you're scared, like, oh, well, like, how will I learn secure transactions when I'm studying for the bar? I am not the best with numbers or math. Clearly, I went to law school. But that secure transactions turned out to be like one of the easiest things that I learned on the bar. And if you told me that as a 1L, I probably would have laughed in your face. Like there's no way I would be able to understand that or get it easily just over the summer. But, you know, you get everything that you need to learn during that summer. So don't feel pressured to take something unless you genuinely are interested in that course. And everything that you learn, every paper that you write, you can use it practically in your practice or in your workspace when you finally do get an internship or a full-time position.
Yeah, I would say definitely the classes I took that most directly impact my current work are anything where you're doing sort of experiential learning. So clinic opportunities are excellent for that. A lot of the sort of legal competition teams, which aren't there, you get course credit for them, even though they're not traditional classes. I was on the moot court team, and that was extremely helpful to learn sort of how to write a brief and how to present it in an oral argument, which is a very valuable skill to, one, learn, and two, just get a lot of opportunities to practice in that moot environment. So anything where you're sort of doing the work of lawyering, whether for actual clients in a clinic or in the practice setting, is very, very helpful. And I would definitely mirror what Dome said, which is that for most of us, law school is the last time we get to take classes. And if there's something on the registration website that looks interesting, even if you know you're never going to do it professionally, why not throw that on your schedule, learn a little bit about an area of law that, you know, maybe one day you come back to, or maybe you get sort of a newfound passion for, and it shapes your career in a fun way. The other upside of taking a lot of different classes is you get to know a lot of professors. And then sometimes you have a professor who's just an excellent teacher, and they teach a class on one of those kind of more boring traditional law school subjects. I took a great class on wills and estates, which is an area of law that I had no academic interest in, but the Professor McSweeney, was like the sweetest man. He taught my property class 1L year. And I knew that if I was going to have to learn wills and estates, I wanted to learn it from him. So I learned something I probably wouldn't have otherwise because I had taken classes with him before, and I got to know him as a person and as a teacher.
Thank you. I think I'm going to circle back to this torts class theme. Our organizer, 2L Brendan Clark, tells me that you were all in the same torts section taught by Professor Laura Heyman. I don't know if you want to talk about torts with Professor Heyman, or maybe just about your experience with the William and Mary faculty. If you, how would you describe them? You can say if you have favorites. That's okay.
Oh, Kat, you going? Well, I'll start with Professor Heyman. I absolutely love Professor Heyman. She was one of my favorite professors at law school. I have a lot of favorite professors, but she's definitely in my top tier of favorite professors. I think, you know, we were all different students and we all have our own different quirks. And I know like my quirk was just starting questions with I feel like, which is, you're taught not to do that in law school, but I just can't help myself. So I would just be like, I feel like this case has more nuances, or I would bring up some issue that I felt was important. And I really appreciated that she never made me feel like, why are you asking this irrelevant question to disrupt my, class and schedule that I had? Like, she always genuinely engaged with me, answered whatever my random thought was, and kind of like helped me reframe it in a different way that kind of expanded my mind. So it kind of reduced, if you ever had imposter syndrome about just asking a question that you felt like maybe this question is not as important, I really feel like she kind of just pushed me to be like, there's no such thing as a question that's dumb or doesn't make any sense. Like, you're free, like, you're here to engage with me, and I'll treat you as a professional and not just as like this little student in my class who's asking me something that really doesn't make any sense. So she's definitely one of my favorites. Special shout outs to Professor Karen Shear, like, who taught me health law. I really loved her. Professor Hamilton. I've taken so many of Professor Hamilton's classes. I just enjoy her as a person, and just like working with her. I still email with her back and forth right now. So those are some of my favorites. I also, Professor Gershwitz too, from Crim Law. Like, I have so many faves, but I won't go on. I'll let other people talk to us.
I also loved having Professor Heyman for 1L torts. It was another one of those subjects where I wasn't particularly interested in the topic itself, but she did such an excellent job of making it relatable to everyone. She engaged all of the students really well. And I think it says a lot about her as a professor that, 2 years after graduating, she was still able to she knows students, she's kept in touch with students, and was able to pull together 3 of the students from her 1L class, which is at this point now like 5 years ago, to be on a panel. I think if I had gone to like some of the professors from my undergrad institution, I don't know that they could name me or pick me out of a lineup, but a lot of William & Mary professors did an excellent job of getting to know us both as students and as people. A lot of them will sort of invite students to, like, on the first day of class, they'll say, pick a group of students, get together, and we'll go to lunch, and they'll just chat with you about, your background, your hopes and dreams, your experiences. And that's a great way to get to know them. I already mentioned Professor McSweeney is one of my favorites. I took several classes with Professor Hamilton, who taught me family law and race law and lawyering, which were both excellent classes. The criminal procedure department at William & Mary is absolutely excellent. Both Professor Gershwitz and Professor Bellin are incredible. I don't do criminal law at all, but I took so many of Professor Bellin's classes just because he's so good at making that topic understandable and relatable.
I'll agree, and I agree with all of their teacher or professor recommendations. They're all excellent. I loved Professor Heyman's class. I think that she really taught me, I think, my first semester how to think like a lawyer. And there are just practical ways that she set up. She taught us to like ask the right questions and think about the right questions. And now when I get a research question, I'm thinking of, how can I run this down? Like, what question am I not asking? Because that's how she sort of taught us to think. So it was just such an incredible experience. And for me, by the end of the semester where I felt like it all clicked, it was just like so powerful. I'm just forever grateful. I think that class was just really pivotal for me in my career. I ended up TAing for Professor Heyman the following 2 years. So it was a great, just overall, to do it over and over again, I still loved it by the end. But yeah, I think in terms of professor recommendations, Dome and George have already covered a lot of the heavy hitters, but there's plenty and there's so many good courses. So definitely check them all out.
Professor Zick and Judge Gibney too. I almost forgot my other 2 faves. So
Thank you. There was a question about what can you say about the William and Mary community? And I guess I would also ask, like, how did you get, we often talk about community at William and Mary. Where did you derive your sense of community? And I know it might begin with your legal practice group, but maybe you can just address that. Where did you derive your sense of community?
I think for me, a lot of it definitely came through like the legal practice group, definitely the first year, that was a great way to sort of meet people because you're taking all of the same classes with the same group of people. I think after that, there was the fact that there are a lot of groups on campus that are, different legal interest groups, different affinity groups, different competition groups, do a great job of sort of putting you in contact with other people who are interested in the same things you are. And that was a great way to sort of meet people who weren't in the same classes as me, to get to know them a little bit better and to sort of grow out my community as I went. And again, I think William and Mary is excellent about making sure that the law school is a very social environment, and there are a lot of opportunities to meet other law students and law professors. The one thing I encourage all the new students to do is again, try to push yourself beyond that into, if you get the opportunity to engage with the wider Williamsburg community, that's also great as well.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely leaned into groups and clubs. I am a joiner, so I was joining everything, specifically the Black Law Students Association, the Health Law and Policy Society, Public Service Fund. I was really involved, heavily involved in all three of those groups, held leadership positions in all of those groups. And I think also just the areas where you commiserate is the areas where you make friends. So if you're a library person, a lot of people made library friends and they would study together. If you were like a cafe person like me, like I hung out with everyone during the cafe, like we would eat together, we would study together. Also where you park your car, the grocery store that you shop in, like you'll notice someone from your class or your next door neighbor, you see them carrying the same torts book, you're like, oh my gosh, you're in class with me, I didn't notice you there, but like now we can, maybe travel together. I remember like I am a New York City person and I did not know how to drive when I came to Williamsburg. I apologize for everyone that I parked next to because it was really touch and go for a while. But the first day of school, someone helped me pump my gas because I was just staring at the gas pump and the gas pump was staring at me. And they happened to be in my, I think it was like crim law class. And he just was like, yeah, let me help you out there. Just wherever you hang out, there will be people. It's not a very big town, so you'll definitely run into the same people in multiple places. So even if you miss your chance that one time on the grocery store line, you'll probably see them again.
Yeah, I echo everything that they said. It's just the people that you see, that you hang out with, the organizations that you join. And yeah, like where you live sometimes. The apartment, I know we had a whole crew that lived in the same apartment complex, so we would often hang out together. So yeah, I think we have a very like collegial school environment, and there are a lot of opportunities for you to hang out and get to know each other. So definitely take them.
Thank you. We have a question in the Q&A. And we're at 7:29, so we'll open it to questions to anyone who has one. The question is, what made you ultimately decide to attend William and Mary Law School?
I can jump in. So I came, my undergrad and grad was a really big state school. And for me, it was really important to try and find a smaller community where I could really build like genuine long-term connections with. And I think William and Mary was the right fit. Not only was it more affordable for me, it also just had the environment and felt like it was going to be a space and place where I could find people to help me get through this journey of law school and then the journey of being a lawyer, right? Those people haven't left and they're still part of my circle of support. So to me, that's exactly what I wanted, and that's what I got. So I'm very grateful.
I'll add, I definitely agree. I think it was definitely appealing to me when I was sort of looking around at different law schools that, first of all, William and Mary definitely had a strong sense of community. It really felt like it was a school that encouraged people to engage with each other as a community. The other thing that I thought was really appealing about William and Mary was the emphasis on sort of service. in whatever form of lawyering you end up doing, there's a strong sort of ethos of being a citizen lawyer and finding some way to sort of give back and contribute to your community, to the law in whatever legal position you end up in. And I think that was a very important factor that I was looking for.
So my experience was a little different. New Yorker geography is basically anything under New Jersey is the South. And at the time I was working for the Department of Health and Human Services in DC, and I was looking to apply to schools around the area. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, Williamsburg, Virginia, it's basically like DC, right? Like, no, it is not basically DC. It is much farther out. And so I applied like, yeah, I'm going to be so close to the city. I might even live in the city. And so initially I was hesitant, like, this is kind of a lot farther than I expected, but I did make the journey, come out and visit the campus. And I just felt I came during finals week, so I could see the real, like the way the school really was, not like during admitted students weekend when everyone else went. You could kind of see the stress on people's faces, but everyone was so welcoming. Like people came out of their like study areas that they were, huddled in to like say hi to me, show me around the school, show me like, oh, this is where you can get your nails done. This is where you can, like, I wanted to know kind of like the little things in the community. Like I knew that it would be a good school as far as the faculty and the community and the campus, just based on everyone that I met in the school. But I'm a person that needs to know that the small touches are also going to be there. So I was like, where do you grocery shop? Where do you do your nails? Where do you do your hair? Like, where do people hang out when they're not hanging out in the school? And everyone was just so welcoming. I mean, they helped me figure out where I was going to live. I didn't even leave yet. They were like, oh, you can live here. Like you can go there, you can do this. And I just really kind of felt like, oh, this is a place where I can focus and not be distracted. New York City, DC, like great places to go to school, but also if you're a very sociable extrovert like me, not the best places to concentrate. And so I really like that William and Mary was like a closed location, that there were things to do, but the focus here was really academics and building that community. And I was able to really spend a lot of time building my network and having friends that I still talk to now and we'll see in 2 weeks, and just building that community. So that's why I decided to go.
Thank you. We have another question. Which of the activities you participated in made you an attractive candidate when you were job hunting? And were there some activities you regret not taking advantage of?
I would say, so one of the things that I did in law school was the trial team. And that was like a great opportunity. And one of the partners I actually work with a lot, she's an alum and she was on the trial team. And she had the same coach as I did. And she graduated a few years back. So it was just great to be able to have that connection and work with her. So I think that's one of the practical things. I think another thing that was really helpful that I got involved in was journal. Just getting involved in journal, I think, is really great. It teaches you how to sort of think. And as a lawyer, sometimes you're not just like working on your cases, you're working on your professional and business development. And that can also include writing things that you're interested in, writing about developments in the law and how they impact sort of society. So I think that was like another really good experience. I did take a clinic my last year and I wish I had taken more, maybe. I think that would be my only thing that I maybe could have taken more advantage of having more clinical experience, because I think it was really great and practical.
So I got an opportunity 1 year to intern at through the Career Services, the Office of Career Services, OCS, at CarMax as a corporate law clerk. And I didn't realize when I got the position that I would also be working at least like almost 20 hours during the school year. So I worked full time the 1L summer, and then I worked 20 hours a week in addition to all my classes for the next 2 years of law school. Even when we switched to remote, I just switched to remote and I still kept working at CarMax. And even though I'm now a health attorney, it was something different that I just wanted to try to see like what the corporate space looks like. And I really enjoyed my time and my experience, and it was very attractive to a lot of places that I applied to work at, that I was basically carrying on almost a full-time job. Law school itself is a full-time job, and then working was a full-time job. And I used to commute between classes from Williamsburg to Richmond, and everyone would be looking at me like I was crazy, but you know, I I did it for almost my whole time. So it kind of feels like I maintained the work experience that I had before I came to law school, and it kind of gave me a sense of normalcy and really increased the way that I time manage. And so it was very attractive to employers, like, oh, we don't have to handhold you through the process because we see like you have a lot of work experience. And I'm not on a competition team, but my 3L year, I did do a moot court competition, a National Black Law Students Association competition, and it was really exciting and fun. We actually placed third, and it made me feel like, oh, I should have just done this earlier and like been fully on the team. And I also was on journal as well. I think if it was something that I did want to do that I just didn't have time, it would have been a clinic. I was working, so it would just didn't fit in the schedule in between CarMax and school to have time for a clinic. So I would have loved to do one.
I think the experience that definitely comes up the most in sort of like all of the interviews I've done since law school was being on the board of a journal. One great thing about William & Mary is a lot of laws, almost all law schools have a law review. William & Mary has 5 academic law journals. So there's a lot of opportunities if that's something you're interested in. There's a lot of chances to get on a journal, and if you are interested in that, being on the board. And it's something, especially doing that during the first couple months of a pandemic and sort of readjusting how we handle running a major student organization like that, I think is something that I will probably be bringing up in job interviews for the rest of my life, because it was a very impactful and important opportunity that I had that last year of law school. I think as far as things that I wish I had done, it is definitely possible to overcommit yourself. I think maybe one thing I'd say is I would have liked to had more free time my last year of law school. But I think if I did, one thing I would have liked to do is research with a professor. A lot of my classmates who knew exactly what area of law they were interested in would work with teachers on specific books or articles that they're working on, and do really some groundbreaking legal research alongside professors. And many of them were credited in those articles. Some of them were even co-authors of the articles, which is incredible. And I wish something I had taken advantage of more when I was a student.
Right. There's a question about career opportunities during law school and after you graduate. And maybe you can talk a little bit about if career services was a help to you while you were here during your kind of career exploration and job hunting.
Yes, we go. No, so for me, I found most of my job opportunities through building my network, which was really, it's something that career offices did emphasize, like make sure you build your network. And when I say network, it doesn't necessarily mean like you have to talk to professors and they're the ones that can necessarily, you know, help you find a position. I found a lot of 3Ls to be helpful, a lot of 2Ls to be helpful. Maybe they interned somewhere before and they liked it, or interned somewhere before and couldn't stand it. They kind of helped me manage my expectations and manage what I would need, and in a more real way that I could kind of like relate to, like, what did you do and how did you do it and how did you get to where you were? And so that really, really helped me a lot, especially trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how I would do it. I also did a lot of my own research. My career service mentor gave me a lot of different websites to like kind of look through, and I just took it upon myself to take that and go even further than what I was given and really just like dig down, like the same way you do legal research for class. I did that for job opportunities, because career service, they have so many different opportunities, but specific like niche areas of law, like you'll have to do the groundwork in order to like help them find it. And once you do, like you'll be able to apply to those different things. So don't like, they can't find everything. Like there's so many things going on. Like you have to do your own research as well, which is what law school teaches you. So you'll be very equipped at that. But yeah, a lot of networking, a lot of research, and just a lot of support from the William and Mary community that I had.
Yeah, I would echo that. I remember getting my 1L job because a 3L had done the program, like internship program to work for judges in New York. She had done the program and told me you should apply. And I was like, okay, I'll apply. And then I applied and ended up getting the internship. And then my 2L job was similar. It was another 3L who was like, you need to do all of these things so you can get this kind of job. And then I was like, okay, I'll do all these things, but I don't know if I want this kind of job. So that's when I went to career services and Dean Podolin, and I was like, Dean Podolin, like, what do I do? These are all the things that I have. These are all the offers. Like, where do I go? How do I decide? And what do I do? Who do I want to be? So that's kind of how I leaned on career services to help me figure out and make some decisions. But like Dome said, some of it is going to have to be your own research and your own digging. And the other half of it is just talking to people, whether it's career services or other students. I think that's super important and helpful because people have a lot of different helpful insights onto how you sort of build your career and set yourself up.
In my case, I can definitely say that career services was an enormous part of all of my internships and the job that I got immediately after law school. Working in sort of nonprofit legal services, it's kind of notoriously a fussy hiring process that I was panicking about the first year I was looking for an internship. But Dean Michael Endy in the career services department really talked me down, sat me down, gave me this fantastic set of resources, shared all of his experiences with other William and Mary students who had successfully navigated that process. And that really, I think, helped me stay sane and centered during that job search. And I ended up getting a job right at the end of law school that I was really happy with, in a large part because of all those resources that the career services department provided.
There's actually a question about school resources. What school resources did you use during your time at William and Mary that you found most useful? So we've just had a nice plug for career services. Would anyone like to jump in with some ideas about resources that you used or heard were helpful to other law students?
I can jump in. I have a huge shout out for the library. The library team is like phenomenal, so helpful. Like I can't say it enough. I think that they are great and just so smart and knowledgeable. There were just questions that I would just go and ask folks in the library team to help me with, and that they would answer or point me in the direction of where to find the book to help me find the answer of what I was looking for. They just are always readily available, accommodating, welcoming. When you walk into the library and you're stressed and overwhelmed and have like something you got to study and do, I think that is just great to sort of see them there encouraging you along the way. Yeah, and another source of support for a lot of students was Miss Sherry, who's in the cafe area. She's just one of the people that like cheers you up on a tough day and is always there and happy and smiling, and just a good ear to talk to about anything, right? She's part of our community and just like another source of support for all of us, definitely.
I must echo the Miss Sherry shout out because she got me through a lot during law school. She will dry your tears. She will make you the best coffee. Like I just felt like she was my William and Mary mom away from home. Like she just really took care of us as a community. She learns everyone's names. like, I don't know what my law school experience would have looked like without her. Additionally, I will say a lot of the clubs that you join are huge resources because alumni usually go back to the clubs that they were a part of. So especially if it's a club that's in an interest area of law that you think you might want to practice, alumni will come back for speaking events, for, just to talk to the students, or, send job opportunities. And so a lot of the externs positions that I had, in addition to CarMax, I got all of those opportunities through like the Health Law and Policy Society, especially like I interned at the Central Virginia Legal Aid Society and their like medical legal partnership that they had, and just so many opportunities from student groups as well as professors who are, well studied and well researched in specific areas that you might be interested in. They know people who could help you. Professor Kern Shear used to put me on informational interviews with different health organizations to see if this was a fit, or maybe it would be something that I was interested in. And so really lean on, I know it might feel frivolous, like, oh, why am I joining all these clubs? But the clubs really do get you places. And also talking with professors really do help and kind of like ground your experience in what you would like to go see and do.
Yeah, I think Catherine and Dome were very thorough, and everything they named is very helpful. Definitely on the days I had 8 a.m. classes, Miss Sherry in the cafe was the only thing getting me through those mornings. The only thing I would add is like student health services are great. Access to, at every major university has a student health center, but ours is great. And student counseling was very helpful as well. So those are both excellent resources that students have access to on campus.
Thank you. And to our graduates, I will send you the link after, but Ms. Sherry was awarded the university's Value in Action recognition this fall, and it was certainly richly deserved. There were many days where, what did she say to me? What can I get you, baby? And I'm like, I needed that. I needed that almost as much as the coffee. I needed that more than the coffee. So she remains a bright light here at William and Mary. One of the questions that came in before we started was, and Dome, this may be a great question for you. It was from someone from California who lived in the city. I may have been Los Angeles or San Diego, I forget which, who was concerned about moving to Williamsburg, Virginia. The experience of do we get to call ourselves a small city? But maybe you can speak to that about the pros and cons of living everywhere. But what did you think about moving to Williamsburg?
I can go first. I was very like, I am not feeling these colonial structures. Just everything just looked very scary. I was like, I don't know. I didn't enjoy the kind of like the tours and all the. I was like, this might not be for me necessarily. But I think one thing about moving to Williamsburg was like, I was like, if I'm gonna move to a place that feels a little different or feels uncomfortable for me, I'm really gonna have to come here as my authentic self. And I mean that in every sense of the word. So like, I wore what I wanted to wear to class. Sometimes I might wear a head wrap. Sometimes I might wear a turban. Sometimes, I made sure, I really like to do my nails. I made sure I found where is the closest nail salon, because if I'm going to be in law school, my nails still need to be done like they are in New York City. I found the places where people could go for brunch. I found the places that play like the music that I like to hear, that have the food that I like to eat. Like I really kind of like dug down to research like what will make me feel safe and comfortable in this community. And I really relied on the Black Law Students Association a lot for kind of like community and comfort. And also just like when you see people that look like you, you're like, hey, I'm friend, you want to be friends? And then, now you're friends. And Kat and I, we would be in each other's apartments. We would study together. We would eat together. And I just really, we built it's a strong but mighty community, I like to say. And we supported each other through classes, through exam periods, through I think we all studied in the same study room at one point, and sometimes you're allowed to take exams outside of the classroom that you normally would have class in, and we would all take our exams together. And like, even though you can't talk or do anything, it just felt like, oh, my friends are here with me, like we're doing this together. And sometimes we would venture out and try to drive to Richmond and then realize, okay, this is too far, we're not doing this again, or try to drive to DC, which only happened like I think one time before we're like, yeah, I'm not doing this again either. And then for those of us that lived in the New York area or the DMV area, we would drive home together for holiday breaks. And so I just really built a community, and I just really came as unapologetically myself. I asked the questions in class that I wanted to ask if I felt like they were relevant to me and how I was experiencing whatever we were discussing as, you know, in the law. And yeah, I just came everywhere as myself. And I think that if you're going to come to Williamsburg, don't feel like I need to change who I am or change what I'm doing or behave a certain way, because you don't have, like, even I would not. So yeah.
I can talk about just I'm from Jersey, so close to New York, but not quite there yet. But coming from a bigger school to a smaller school, I just think, you know, there's a beauty in the smaller community and finding the different beauties within it. I remember a couple of us used to go walking in Yorktown Park or York Rivertown State Park. Like it was like maybe 10 to 20 minutes from campus. And it just was like a wonderful study break. There are just so many nice little places to walk to just get away from campus. And there's a lot of scenery and scenic stuff that you can see. I don't think I appreciated it until I got to William and Mary. And now I work in New York City and I miss that. I just want to go walking in like the quiet. So I think it's just a good change of pace, especially to do law school. It kind of calms your mind, not being surrounded by too much noise and hustle and bustle. So the transition is hard, but I think, like I said, there's just like a lot of good things that you will, you might miss.
I'll add too, I also moved to Williamsburg from Chicago. I was another person who did not drive before law school and had to quickly learn how to get around by car when I moved out. I think the main thing I would recommend, if you get the chance to, is just sort of chat with older students or other sort of established members of the William and Mary community about sort of what your resources around town are, like where to go for food, where to go for haircuts, where to buy clothes and school supplies and stuff like that. If you can find out where other law students live, there are a lot of apartment complexes that had sort of like mini enclaves of law students, which is great for the camaraderie of like being able to pop over to somebody else's apartment to study for a bit. Also just like practical matters like going on grocery runs together is a lot easier if you know you have somebody who's going to drive and you sort of coordinate, and it's more of a communal event. So
Okay. This is a question directed for Dome and Catherine. As a person of color, was it a difficult transition to Williamsburg or the William and Mary community?
I mean, I can jump in. I think, you know, I went to a bigger state school that was there. It was predominantly people that didn't look like me, right? So that was where I was coming from into this space. I had moved home and worked in my own community. So I had a change of that, you know, going back to seeing people that look like me all the time, and then went back to Williamsburg. So I think the transition was, it was interesting and complicated in a lot of different ways. I think it depends on geography, right? Like where you're coming from, what communities you've been exposed to, because I think me and the people that look like me, right, the other Black law students had different experiences depending on where they were coming from. But I think overall, what I did feel about the William and Mary community is that I had people that supported me, whether they were Black law students or allies, right? I felt like there was a community and a space for me to talk about how I felt, talk about my experiences. And that wasn't something that I felt, was silenced in any way, if that makes sense. I feel like there was a space for me to be my authentic self, and not feel like I had to be somebody else in order to thrive or, survive in law school, however you want to say it.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I think I felt really supported by professors to ask questions that had to do with race. And one thing about me, if you were ever in class with me, I was gonna ask that question, or I was gonna ask multiple questions, or have comments versus questions. And so I really felt empowered to say the things that I felt like were necessary for me to understand the subject matter. I didn't dance around certain issues that I felt like were important to talk about. There is a burden with being that person all the time. So, it's not your duty to kind of teach the rest of your classmates who might not have had those same experiences anything about you as a person or the communities that you come from. But I did feel very empowered to kind of share experiences, or ask questions and kind of like dig down deep on the academic perspective. And I felt supported by older students and my friends from my class to kind of navigate through issues that maybe my other classmates weren't going through, or maybe I wasn't understanding very clearly. And so I clung heavily to like our class community that we built. And again, like I just came everywhere as myself. Like I wore the things that I would wear in the city. And I came from a school that technically would be considered predominantly white community, or where people don't look like me, but our Black community was very large. So I never noticed that. I didn't feel like I was anywhere where people didn't look like me. And then I'm in NYC, I moved to the DMV, and then, I just was always surrounded by people who looked like me. So I was very apprehensive and nervous, like, oh, like, how am I going to feel in William and Mary? But I grounded myself in who I was. And so I feel like I was supported in all the decisions and all the things that I did, whether it was in the classroom or outside of the classroom.
Thank you. Oh, we have a question about 1L exams. I've heard that 1L exams can be eye-opening. What was your experience? And was there something you would have done differently to prep, or that would have helped you, or would have worked well to help you prep? And can you, I'm not a lawyer, didn't go to law school, but there's only 1 or 2 exams traditionally during a typical course. That would be very different from my experience. What was that like?
It definitely is a little bit stressful when your entire grade comes down to just one exam. So it is definitely a bit of a shock to the system. But I think or at least I felt like I was very well prepared by all of our professors, because I think almost all of them, at least that first semester, would give us like old exams to take a look at and sort of see what's a typical law school 1L question look like. And then they would either give us sample answers that other students had gotten good grades on so we can see what a good answer looks like, or they would give us the opportunity to write our own answers and then have them reviewed for feedback. So if you are stressed about it, you will have the opportunity to see other examples and to test out your own sort of ability to answer those before you actually get to exam day.
I think so. The first 1L fall semester and 1L spring semester are just you're in 2 different places in life, it feels like. I didn't have any attorneys in my family, so I kind of just went in blind. I was stressed about outlining. I didn't even understand really what outlining was. Everyone just kept talking about it like it was this scary monster. Like, you need to outline, you need to outline. And you're just like, what is outlining? I'm not sure. So you end up kind of just like rewriting the whole textbook. It's not helpful. You think it's an open book exam. So you think, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to flip through this 100-page outline that I wrote. No, you won't. You probably won't even open it. You do actually need to know what you learned in class and what's going on. And so the second semester, I learned a couple things, and this is usually what I tell people when they ask me about exams. The first thing is use your resources, because most of the clubs that you join, like even I was in the Women's Law Society, they have an outline bank. I think you have to pay dues, but there's an outline bank there where you can see other students' outlines and you can model your outlines off work that has already been done. You do not need to go and reinvent the wheel. A lot of clubs have outlines, and if you don't feel like joining a club, a lot of older students who've taken the same class or same professor may have an old outline that you can use as guidance to kind of help you and make it into your own so that you can actually learn what you're supposed to learn. Another thing that I use that is popular for some people, not popular for other people, is there are so many study guides, particularly online. I really enjoyed Quimby. Some people hate Quimby with a passion in their soul. I was not one of those people. I would have been a Quimby ambassador, honestly, if they would have, given me the opportunity. I used Quimby because they kind of give you a summary breakdown of what you are already learning in the textbook. So sometimes you read a case, maybe it's from the 1800s, and you read the case 3 times, spent 5 hours, you still have no idea what's going on. I think that's the best time to use something like a study source like Quimby to be like, okay, what was I supposed to be understanding and what was I supposed to be learning? Because you might think you need to memorize every case that you learn, but the exam is not going to be about the cases you learned. The exam is going to be about the rules and the laws that you've learned and how would you apply them in a different and new situation. So it's really important to actually be able to get the point and not just memorize what happened, who fell down where and who hit their leg on what, and that's not gonna help you on the test. And so between having the outline bank resources and understanding that I can use study guides and not feel ashamed for using extra study guides if you needed to, I think I came into the spring semester with a completely different attitude, and I did a lot better on my exams.
Yeah, I mean, I think they both gave some really good advice. I would think about who you study with critically. That's one of the things that there was one person that I look back on my law school journey. She was great, and she was in my section and one of my closest section friends. And, I think throughout the years, we would always come back to each other and then spend some time studying one-on-one. And I realized for me, it was really helpful to have like a study partner or two, and maybe not always do group sessions because they can be overwhelming. Some of the questions that folks are asking aren't the questions that you were thinking about. So then you're worried that you don't know what's actually going on, and it becomes a big spiral, and everyone's trying to help each other. It's always like genuine and people are trying to help each other, but then you start feeling nervous about what you don't know. And, like Dome said at the beginning, not everything's going to work for you, right? So studying with everyone is not going to work for you because not everyone's going to have the same study style as you. So if you find that one person or those couple of people that really sort of think, the way that you do and study in the same ways, I would encourage you to work with them. It's okay to study with other people, but just be cautious on how many people, right? And whether or not it works. If that one person works for you, great. If they don't, then say, hey, like I got to study with somebody else, right? And just try to stick to that.
Thank you. We're a little past 8 o'clock. I just wanted to give the panelists a chance if there's anything, any parting words of advice or encouragement that you have for our admits. One of the things I was going to mention, Dome mentioned the experience of people who may be, the first lawyers in their family. We have a new student organization, Newish, that actually was founded during the pandemic at the very beginning by 2 students. They define first generation very broadly, first person in your family who's been to graduate school, first person to college, very open and welcoming, because they were very aware about how much knowledge was passed between 3 L's and 2 L's and 1 L's, and with the sort of online world in which we were living, that became increasingly difficult, and it's still going strong today. So I hope, I can't speak to that, but I'm really appreciative to see it still going so strong. I will tell our attendees that I will do my best to get you answers to questions that I did not read that were submitted, and I can see some in the chat that we're not going to get to. We have Admitted Students Weekend on Friday and Saturday. I hope those of you who can attend will. We're also going to film as much of it as we can. So if you're at a distance or just have a conflict, we'll bring it to you for your viewing pleasure. Thank you very much to our to Dome, George, and Catherine for joining us tonight. It is a huge pleasure. I worked here when you were entering 1Ls. It is just a pleasure to see you again and to catch up and to see, the great things that you're doing in your lives. So thank you again for joining us, and best wishes to everyone, and have a good evening.